Saturn always looked peaceful from a distance. From the forward viewport of the Kestrel, the ringed giant filled the void with calm, golden light, its icy rings scattering sunlight into drifting glare. It was beautiful, in a way that made the rest of the solar system feel distant and unreal. But Anton Kade, 34 years old and already tired of what corporate contracts call exploration, knew better than to trust beauty in space. Out here, the quiet could be the most dangerous thing of all. Inside the tug, everything smelled like recycled air, old wiring, and the bitter sting of instant coffee. The Kestrel was small, patched together from older ships, and its consoles hummed with the familiar, uneven rhythm of aging processors doing their best to keep up. Anton floated in front of the main display, scrolling through engine diagnostics with steady movements. He trusted the ship more than he trusted most people, and he liked it that way. A new mission brief arrived from Krona Corporation, the kind that instantly tightened his jaw. The file flashed across his screen, cold corporate formatting. Nebula-14, a research platform in high-inclination orbit above Saturn's ring plane. Classified work, 0 communications for 72 hours. Crew status unknown. Primary objective, retrieve all data storage units. Secondary, avoid any physical samples. No transmissions, no publicity, no unexpected questions. The contract language felt wrong. Too many disclaimers, too many warnings about biological or electromagnetic contaminants. Anton had seen this pattern before. When corporations hid details, it was never to protect the crew. The Kestrel drifted above the pale glow of the rings as the engines prepared for a course change. Malik, their pilot, locked in the burn sequence manually. He preferred it that way, hands on the controls, guiding the ship with practiced confidence. Rhea ran checks in the common module, her voice calm but carrying a tension that matched Anton's own thoughts. Anton reviewed the mission brief again in silence. The orbital path of Nebula-14 was unusual. Steep inclination, eccentric rotation, and a trajectory that made no sense for normal research operations. It was the kind of orbit someone would choose if the station needed to stay out of sight. He strapped into his seat as the ship rotated, aligning itself for the ascent out of the ring plane. The burn pressed him into the cushioning with a familiar force, the hull vibrating as the tug accelerated. Saturn slowly slid beneath them, its rings becoming a razor-thin horizon of ice and light. Anton checked suit readiness. Filters stable, oxygen reserves high, power systems nominal. His father had taught him everything about suit maintenance in the docks of Ceres, long before the accident that ended everything. Anton carried those lessons with him now, folding them into the muscle memory of each safety check. In space, you survive because you respected procedure, not because you got lucky. The climb toward Nebula-14 continued. The station remained invisible on scopes, hidden above the orbital plane like a dark star waiting to be found. Krona's briefing offered almost nothing. Materials research, advanced power prototypes, no public records. Every line felt like an intentional omission rather than information. The minutes stretched into hours as the Kestrel approached the arrival vector. The stars grew sharper, less washed out by Saturn's reflected light. The silence inside the cockpit thickened, broken only by the soft ventilation and the muted beeps of floating diagnostic windows. Anton studied the trajectory plot once more. Nebula-14 was directly ahead, somewhere in the dark. A facility big enough to house 50 researchers, a station with multiple power systems, a place that shouldn't be able to vanish without a trace. He didn't know what they would find there, but he knew one thing. Krona had not been honest. The Kestrel continued forward, cutting through the cold space above Saturn, and the ETA finally ticked into its final hour. Anton pressed his gloved thumb against the edge of the console, grounding himself in the tactile sensation. Whatever waited on Nebula-14, they were committed now. No turning back, no safe option left. They would discover what the station had been hiding, and whether they wanted to or not,
they would face whatever had silenced it.
Nebula-14 revealed itself slowly, as if the station resisted being seen. For most of the approach, it was only a faint patch of heat against the cold vacuum, a shape without definition drifting high above Saturn's rings. But as the kestrel closed the final kilometers, its silhouette took form. What emerged did not look abandoned in the usual sense. It looked like a place that had been emptied of everything human. Anton watched through the cockpit viewport while Malik guided the vessel with minimal thrust. The station's structure became clearer with every passing second. A long central spine with 2 habitat rings, a cluster of antenna arrays branching outward like skeletal limbs, and numerous modules grafted onto its frame with a lack of symmetry that hinted at rushed expansion. No navigation lights, no safety beacons, not even signs of power. The station should have been humming with low-level energy. Even a dormant platform emitted noise along the spectrum. Yet Nebula-14 was almost silent. Too silent. Malik aligned the kestrel with a docking collar on the station's outer module. The automated handshake failed. The alignment grid that should have lit up remained dark. The station did not acknowledge their presence at all. Anton checked the comms panel. The readings were wrong. There was no telemetry, no emergency pings, not even a structural ID broadcast. It was as if someone had deliberately muted the entire station. Rhea floated behind them, studying the first visual scans with attention she'd tried to hide. The closer they drifted, the clearer the surface details became. The hull was scarred in places, smoothed in others, and in several sections warped into subtle waves, as though the metal had been softened and pulled before cooling again. Around the dorsal truss, Anton noticed a patch that looked like an old wound. It wasn't the result of micrometeorites. It looked intentional. The kestrel made contact with a muted thud. Docking clamps engaged, though the pressure indicators refused to shift into the safe zone. The seal was far from perfect. They would need full suits for internal access. Anton moved to the suit bay. The act of preparing the exosuit felt almost like a ritual. He checked each system twice, focusing on the mechanical details so he wouldn't dwell on what waited inside the station. Malik and Rhea joined him shortly after. When all 3 helmets sealed with a dull click, the world shrank to their helmet lights, their breathing, and the muted interface tones. The airlock cycled open onto Nebula-14. The transition into the station felt like crossing a thin line between reality and something else. A narrow docking tube connected the kestrel to a corridor that stretched into darkness. Tiny droplets of frozen condensation drifted through the air. Some sparkled in their helmet beams, others clung to surfaces and formed spiraling frost patterns. Anton stepped forward. The environment temperature plunged sharply, though his suit compensated within seconds. The corridor was still and quiet, as if every molecule inside had settled into a state of waiting. They advanced slowly. Their lights moved across a collection of abandoned objects suspended in the air. A toolkit, a loose tablet, a scattered set of notes, a spoon still rotating as if someone had released it moments earlier. Yet everything was coated in frost. No crew had walked these halls in days. A broken sign hung ahead, barely readable in the dim glow. Anton moved close enough to decipher the fate of the others. One direction pointed toward a research sector, another led upward toward the living quarters, a third path descended deeper into the station, toward the core access shaft where the primary data systems were housed. Rhea suggested they head straight to the core. The data was the priority. If anything could explain what had happened here, it would be there. Anton's instincts pushed him to check the habitat ring first, but the mission parameters allowed no time. They continued downward. The further they moved, the stranger the station became. Everywhere Anton looked, the walls carried marks that didn't fit any recognizable pattern of damage. Long, parallel lines ran across panels with unnatural precision. They weren't caused by tools or natural wear. Instead, they seemed patterned, almost like impressions of movement rather than impact. He wanted to examine them more closely, but Malik urged them onward. The core access was close. As they descended the central shaft, the station began to feel less like a structure and more like a hollow echo. The emergency lights flickered weakly, sometimes illuminating stretches of corridor, only to plunge them back into darkness. Their footsteps made no sound in the vacuum. The station absorbed everything. At last, they reached the core chamber entrance. The door was stuck, halfway open. Anton forced it wider, metal scraping against metal with a harsh vibration he felt through his gloves. Inside, the heart of Nebula-14 was exposed. Rows of server racks that should have filled the chamber were missing. Not torn out, not destroyed, removed with care. The cabling that remained had been severed cleanly. Power units were detached and arranged in a pile near the wall, as if someone intended to transport them, but ran out of time. Anton floated deeper into the space, his lamp sweeping over empty mounts and scattered frost. Every detail confirmed the same unsettling truth. Someone had deliberately stripped the core. Ria joined him, her voice tense. She observed that the crew had dismantled the entire data array themselves. Anton agreed, but the question remained unanswered. Why had they done it? What could force a trained scientific team to abandon their station and take the most critical components with them? Malik called them toward the far wall. Anton saw what had caught his attention. A darkened silhouette shaped like a human hand rested on the alloy surface. It wasn't a burn, it wasn't the stain. It was more like a shadow imprinted into the material, as if the metal remembered a moment of contact too intense to fade. When Anton moved his helmet light across it, the outline shimmered slightly, shifting in a way that made him recoil. His suit recorded a spike in his pulse. Near the floor, he noticed a small blinking object, a portable beacon, out of power but still trying to broadcast one last fragment. He collected it and triggered the data stored within. A short line of text projected into the air in pale blue light. It lasted for only 2 seconds before the beacon died completely. The message read, "If you are seeing this, do not follow us." The room seemed to grow colder. Anton absorbed the meaning in silence. This was not an evacuation. It was a retreat. Something had driven the crew out and they wanted no one to come after them. He exchanged a long, tense glance with the others. No one spoke. There was no need to. Without another word, they prepared to press deeper into Nebula-14. Something was still here, and it was watching. The descent toward the station's central spindle felt like falling through the ribs of some enormous, metallic creature. Every corridor in Nebula-14 repeated the same unnerving pattern. Floating objects suspended in place, surfaces chilled past normal environmental tolerances, and silence so complete that even the faint hum of Anton's suit systems felt intrusive. The three of them moved slowly, drifting past abandoned workstations and ceiling rails like for microgravity equipment. The light from their helmets carved narrow tunnels into the darkness. Nothing reflected back except empty rooms, overturned tools, and partitions sealed an emergency lockdown. The atmosphere of the station told its own story, and none of it made sense. Anton kept replaying the warning they had found, a message projected from a dying beacon that seemed to anticipate their arrival. "If you are seeing this, do not follow us." The words kept repeating in his mind like a mantra. It didn't matter how he analyzed it, the meaning had only one direction. Somebody had left this station alive. They had left on purpose, and they had not wanted to be pursued. The spindle was the backbone of Nebula-14. Its vertical structure connected every major deck, and its core should have been the beating heart of the station. Life support regulators, atmospheric processors, environmental locks, and the main data servers. Instead, The air here felt colder. Their suit temperature indicators compensated for the chill, but the way frost clung to the inner walls in branching patterns suggested that something had drained ambient heat faster than normal conduction could account for. Anton allowed his gloved hand to skim the surface of the corridor as they drifted downward. The frost melted under the warmth of the suit, then refroze almost instantly. That wasn't natural. It was as if the metal itself remembered being cold. Rhea paused at an intersection, where the corridor widened into a circular hub. The room looked like the staging area for scientific equipment. Metal cages floated against the walls, anchored only by thin cables. Transparent storage containers drifted freely. Some cracked, others fogged from the inside. Some held nothing at all. One held a shattered internal frame, with delicate filaments hanging loose like the remnants of an exploded spiderweb. Malik's voice stayed steady in Anton's ear, but the tension beneath it was unmistakable. He scanned the room carefully, sweeping his helmet light across the floating debris. He noted the marks on the walls, long and uniform. They curved upward in patterns that were too controlled to be random. Not fractures, not impact scars, something else. Anton floated closer to examine the marks. They seemed almost structural, like grooves etched into the alloy by forces that had a sense of direction. He had seen electromagnetic burns before. This wasn't the same. These lines looked like something had drawn itself through the walls, leaving a trace embedded in the metal. Not melted, not scratched, displaced. He felt his pulse elevate. His suit captured the change and highlighted it in the UHD, stress response increasing. He forced his breath into a slow rhythm. He needed a clear mind, not fear. The corridor bent sharply into a vertical passageway. It was the access conduit to the core. The emergency lights here flickered irregularly, powered by backup cells that hadn't completely failed. Their dim glow revealed shapes on the far end, panels partially open, internal cables drifting in the air like inert tentacles. Anton approached the conduit entry and pulled himself inside. Wires brushed against his arm as he passed by, weightless and dead. The air tasted metallic through the suit's filters, sharper than normal. He wondered how much longer the station had been without proper ventilation. Hours? Days? Longer? The core access doorway was only half open. The mechanism had frozen in mid-cycle. Anton braced his boots against the wall and forced the access chamber open wider. It protested with the vibration that traveled through his arms. On the other side, the main core chamber yawned open in a sphere-like space, large enough for 10 people to work in at once. Or it should have been. Now it was empty. The server arrays that were supposed to anchor the chamber had been dismantled, whole racks removed from their mounts. Not ripped out in panic, but carefully unbolted and lifted away. The cables dangling from the mounts were cleanly severed. Neat. Deliberate. Somebody had taken their time. A dim object drifted near the center of the chamber. Anton reached for it and brought it closer to his lamp. It was a power module, cold and inert, with a tiny symbol scrawled on its surface and permanent marker, a simple handwritten line. A14, exit 2. He didn't recognize the code. It wasn't an engineering designation. It wasn't part of Krona's standard labeling system. It looked like a field note, something written by a crew member shortly before leaving. Rhea drifted beside him, studying the empty mounts. "So somebody stripped this place," she said quietly. Her tone carried disbelief rather than fear. "Why?" Anton asked. If the station was failing, the crew would have evacuated, not dismantled the core. "Unless the core wasn't supposed to stay here, unless they moved it somewhere else," Rhea replied. Anton shook his head. The core units weigh a ton each, even in microgravity. Moving them out of the station entirely would take hours. And then what? Into the void? "Not into the void, maybe," Malik said. His voice echoed over the comms with a low, static grumble. He had drifted toward the opposite end of the chamber. "Come look at this." Anton and Rhea joined him. Malik had found a second mark on the wall, near another hatch. This one wasn't a handprint. It was a broad streak of darkened alloy stretching almost a meter long. The discoloration rippled like a shadow that had frozen in mid-motion. It reminded Anton of time-lapse footage, where a moving object left an echo behind itself. He felt a shiver travel down his back. The streak flowed downward, as if something had passed through the wall itself. The metal around the discoloration hadn't been burned. It hadn't been etched. It had been displaced on a molecular level. He didn't have a better word for it. It was as if the wall itself had lost its clarity in that shape, smudged into a darker version of itself. Rhea broke the silence. Something moved here, but nothing solid could go through alloy plating. Anton didn't answer immediately. His mind kept circling back to the missing core units, the stripped cables, the sealed hatches, the warning beacon. If the crew had left, they had left with purpose. Anton activated his suit scanner. The device hummed as it mapped local environmental readings. Radiation normal, oxygen negligible, chemical composition stable, but a trace signal registered at the edge of the spectrum, a trace anomaly in the magnetic field. It pulsed intermittently, almost like a heartbeat buried beneath static. He followed the signal. The pulse grew stronger near the hatch adjacent to the streaked wall, a maintenance airlock. Its handle was locked in the open position, but the door was sealed. Anton paced his hand on the hatch. The metal felt almost warm beneath his glove, which made no sense given the environmental temperature. He leaned closer, watching the reading stabilize. There was something beyond this door, something the crew had sealed behind him. He pushed the manual override. The mechanism resisted at first, then slid aside just enough to reveal the room beyond. It was dark, but not completely. A soft, faint glow throbbed at the far end of the chamber. Something was inside. Anton's breath caught. His heart rate spiked on the UHD. Rhea whispered over comms, her voice barely audible. "Anton, what is that?" But he didn't answer. He drifted forward, drawn by the impossible glow. The glow inside the sealed chamber was unlike anything Anton had ever seen on a station built by human hands. It was not bright. It did not flash or pulse aggressively. Instead, it breathed, a faint radiance that expanded and contracted in slow, deliberate waves, as if the room itself had a heartbeat hidden just beneath the threshold of darkness. Anton drifted through the narrow gap of the half-open hatch. The chamber beyond was warmer than the rest of Nebula-14. Not physically warm. His suit readouts confirmed the temperature remained far below freezing. But the atmosphere carried a strange density, a pressure that made the tiny hairs on his arms lift even through layers of insulation. It felt like standing near a massive transformer coil, except the energy here was silent, steady, and strangely calm. The walls curved inward in a dome-like shape. This room wasn't listed in the station layout Krona had provided. It didn't match any known module used in research platforms. Someone had added this compartment to Nebula-14 after construction, or had repurposed an existing space for a purpose never meant to be disclosed. At the center of the room, suspended several feet above the graded floor, hung a crystalline object the size of a human skull. It rotated slowly in midair, although no gravity or magnetic system in the chamber was active. Its structure
At the center of the room, suspended several feet above the graded floor, hung a crystalline object the size of a human skull. It rotated slowly in midair, although no gravity or magnetic system in the chamber was active. Its structure was geometric, almost fractal, composed of layered translucent facets that caught the faint glow and refracted it into shifting currents of color. Each turn of the object sent ripples across the walls, faint distortions like heat haze. Anton approached carefully, watching his HUD fill with warnings. Electromagnetic surge detected. field resonance unstable. Unknown frequency pattern detected. None of the alerts provided actionable information. They simply confirmed that this object, whatever it was, did not belong here. Rhea entered the room behind him, her movements slow, almost reverent. Malik remained near the hatch, scanning the corridor as if expecting something to follow them. The air inside the chamber carried a low harmonic vibration, a sound too deep to hear, but felt in the bones. Anton's chest tightened with every wave. He focused on the crystalline object. Its surfaces shifted subtly as it rotated. Not a physical change, but something in the way the light bent across the facets. The glow wasn't coming from an internal source. It was emerging from a distortion in the space around it. Anton activated his scanner. The beam washed over the crystal and returning incomplete data. Structural analysis failed. Composition inconclusive. Resonance pattern non-terrestrial. He canceled the scan. The object reacted. Its rotation slowed. The glow deepened. The harmonic vibration focused itself into a single pure note that resonated inside Anton's helmet, bypassing his audio filters. The sound was soft but powerful, like a distant choir singing from the heart of a cavern. Anton froze. His HUD flickered. The oxygen readings wavered. The external temperature spiked and fell in impossible increments. Rhea's voice trembled slightly, barely audible. She whispered his name not in fear, but in recognition of something overwhelming. She could feel it too. They all could. The object was trying to communicate, not through words, not through symbols, through a shift in perception itself, a shared impulse, a call written into the fabric of the field surrounding it. Anton stepped even closer. His fingers brushed against the thin layer of frost on the floor. The glow condensed into a tighter sphere around the crystal. The humming grew more focused, almost like a whisper directed at him. His vision blurred for a moment. The room faded into a haze of light and shadow. Far away beyond the glow, he sensed something else. An impression, not an image. A memory not his own. A corridor of the station filled with rushing crew members. Panic. Lights flickering. Shapes moving through sealed bulkheads. The crystalline object suspended in an entertainment cage. Hands reaching. Voices shouting orders. A choice being made. And then darkness. The vision ended as abruptly as it had begun. Anton inhaled sharply, disoriented. His HUD steadied again. His head felt heavy, as if he had been pulled from a deep sleep. Rhea steadied herself against the wall, breathing heavily. She looked shaken. Malik's voice crackled through the comms, sharp and worried. He had felt it too. Whatever the crystal had done, it affected them all. Anton turned his attention back to the object. It had stopped rotating. It hovered motionless, the glow fading to a dim, steady pulse. It felt like waiting. Watching. Anton drifted beneath it, examining the chamber. Behind the crystalline structure, partly hidden in the shadows, he noticed a series of markings etched on the wall. They were more deliberate than the strange streaks seen elsewhere on the station. These lines formed a pattern, a repeating sequence of angled symbols, each carved with unnatural precision. Some resembled mathematical notations, others looked like orbital plots. A few appeared almost like letters, but belonging to no known language. Anton traced a gloved hand near the symbols without touching them. His helmet light revealed scratches, deep, precise, intentional. There was nothing chaotic about the design. It was the work of someone with purpose. In the lower corner of the wall, half hidden beneath a structural girder, he saw something else. A small portable terminal, cracked and dark. He retrieved it,
dusting off a thin layer of frost. When he powered it on, the screen flickered weakly, revealing a half-corrupted log file. The recording played automatically. Static. Then a voice, tired, frantic, fading in and out. We couldn't contain it. The resonance field destabilized. The core units are secure. We sealed the exit vectors. A14 group departed 40 minutes ago. Do not follow us, whoever you are. Do not. The file ended in a burst of noise. No timestamp, no signature. Anton slowly exhaled. This was confirmation. The crew had escaped the station, and they had taken the station's core units with them. But the crystalline object, this thing, had been left behind. Not by accident, by necessity. Anton felt the weight of realization settle over him. The crew had not fled the station because of a catastrophic failure. They had fled from the crystal. He floated upward to meet its dim pulse. The object responded with a faint shift in color, the glow warming into a soft amber, as if acknowledging his presence. He wasn't sure if the response comforted him or terrified him, because there was something else the terminal log had implied, that the crew had not said directly, but which echoed beneath the message. The crew had sealed the exit vectors, plural. That means they had created more than one path out of the station, more than one direction they could have gone, more than one escape route through open space. Anton realized they were not alone in this room. The glow wasn't just reacting to them. It was orienting itself, aligning towards something beyond the walls. Another presence, another field. Something else was inside Nebula-14, and it was moving. Anton's heartbeat accelerated. The glow shifted again, sharper this time.
Then the lights in the corridor outside flickered. Something was coming. The corridor outside the signal chamber pulsed with intermittent light, each flicker revealing a slightly different view of the station. The shadows seemed to shift with every heartbeat, stretching and collapsing like they were alive. Anton steadied himself in the hatchway, trying to focus on the rhythm of his own breathing. But even that felt strange inside the suit. Every inhale sounded too loud, every exhale too soft. The air inside his helmet tasted metallic, as if the station itself was seeping into the filters. Something was moving through Nebula-14. It was not fast, it was not loud. It was simply present, a pressure that thickened the silence around them. The lights overhead dimmed again. When they returned, the frost on the walls had changed pattern, as if it had flowed across the surface like liquid before freezing again. Malik urged them to move. The glow from the crystalline object grew distant behind them, yet Anton still felt its pulse resonating in the back of his mind. It was not a call anymore. It felt more like a warning. The crew had sealed their exit vectors. They had left the station, but they had not left alone. Anton turned his attention to the maintenance shaft leading toward the escape launcher. The hatch was marked with a faint smear of residue, almost identical to the shadow handprint they had seen earlier. It had spread into elongated shapes, as if trailing motion had been captured and paused. When Anton passed his light over it, the shapes shimmered slightly, resisting interpretation, like reflections from a distant surface submerged in water. He pushed the hatch open, it groaned, and then gave way to reveal a narrow vertical shaft with collapsed rails and scattered equipment. Storage crates floated without order. Loose containers revolved slowly in the air like drifting buoys. One container had a cracked lid that revealed a stack of metallic cylinders, all labeled with the same field code he had seen in the core room. Every cylinder was empty. Anton reached for the rail and began pulling himself down the shaft.
The others followed. The station felt different. The deeper they moved, the metallic walls gave way to sections lined with composite plates that did not match the original construction. Someone had reinforced the interior, as if attempting to constrain something. The reinforcement ended abruptly, replaced again by exposed structural beams that shimmered faintly from a residual electromagnetic stress.
The shaft opened into a larger chamber shaped like a hollow dome. A wide docking cradle dominated the center of the room, designed to hold a small escape vessel. The cradle was empty, but what surrounded it drew Anton's attention immediately. Patterns were etched in the floor. Complex lines spiraled outward from the cradle, intersecting with arcs and geometric nodes. The lines reminded Anton of orbital paths. They were denser, more layered, almost like overlapping routes mapped across dimensional space rather than physical distance. The markings glowed with subtle luminescence when illuminated by their lamps, as though they retained energy from whatever had created them. Anton drifted slowly across the chamber, studying the symbols. They were not random. They formed a structure, a map, a sequence. He felt a pressure behind his eyes, a sensation similar to what he had experienced when the crystalline object induced the vision. He saw glimpses of the crew again, but this time they were not in panic. They moved with purpose, carrying the dismantled data cores, preparing the escape vessel. Their faces looked strained but resolute. They activated something within the chamber, and the markings ignited in a wave of light. Vision faded. Rhea approached the cradle and ran her glove along the surface. A thin layer of frost broke away. Beneath it, she saw a patch of alloy melted into a crater shape. Not a burn mark, not a chemical reaction. Something had displaced the material, the same way the walls had been displaced. A faint pattern radiated outward from the center of the crater, the same pattern mirrored in larger etched design across the floor. Anton looked beyond the cradle to a sealed corridor at the far edge of the chamber. The hatch was reinforced from the outside, barricaded with pieces of metal welded together in desperation. The welds were crude, rapid, and uneven. Behind the thick plating, faint vibrations trembled through the alloy. They were spaced evenly, like a slow pulse. Anton approached cautiously. His scanner read the vibrations but could not classify them. The frequency was too low, almost subterranean in tone. The signal curve resembled the crystalline object's resonance, but this one was deeper, heavier, like something forming or dissolving behind the door. Anton backed away from the hatch. His instinct screamed at him to avoid contact. Malek's breathing grew heavier in the comm feed. The station seemed to tighten around them, as if its walls were contracting. The atmosphere felt heavier despite the lack of gravity. The pulse behind the sealed hatch grew slightly louder, or perhaps simply more noticeable now that they were still. Anton turned toward the spiral pattern on the floor. He studied it one more time. The crew had activated this chamber. They had taken the core units. They had used this place as their exit vector, a term he still did not fully understand. But the message was clear. The crew had not vanished randomly. They had escaped with intention. He moved to the center of the pattern. The cradle appeared to be more than a launch platform. It was a mechanism, though its function lay beyond conventional engineering. He noticed faint burn-like markings on the underside of the cradle's main brace, as if it had been exposed to an intense but highly focused energy field. The markings radiated outward like veins of light frozen into the metal. He imagined the crew standing here, making their decision. The station must have been collapsing under the resonance field's influence. They must have known time had run out, and yet they left the crystal behind. Why? A flicker of movement caught his eye. A shadow passed across the upper wall of the chamber. Not a shape, not a figure, just a warping of the light itself, as though space briefly folded. The pulse behind the seal hat intensified. The floor markings glimmered faintly. The crystalline object's resonance, still echoing in Anton's mind, vibrated in harmony. Something inside Nebula-14 was awakening. Anton felt a pull inside his chest, a subtle but undeniable tug, as if his body recognized a pattern buried in the air around him. He shook off the sensation and drifted toward the exit, urging the others to retreat back toward the docking arm.
The chamber felt increasingly dangerous, as if it would collapse inward at any moment. Before they left, Anton took one last look at the cradle. The etched patterns seemed to react to his gaze, their luminescence flickering gently. He wondered whether the system had been waiting for a signal that he could not understand, or whether it had already completed its purpose when the crew escaped. The retreat through the shaft felt longer than the descent. Every corridor seemed narrower. Every surface seemed altered, changed by invisible forces flowing through the alloy. Frost patterns shifted the moment they passed them, like the station was exhaling in their wake. They reached the docking tube connecting Nebula-14 to the Kestrel. The tube was vibrating, not violently, but rhythmically, synchronized with the pulse behind the sealed chamber. The resonance traveled through the station's frame and into the Kestrel's hull. Anton sealed the airlock behind them. The sound was a welcome barrier. Inside the tug, the hum of the familiar system steadied his breath. The station's influence felt muted now, though not entirely gone. The crystalline object's resonance lingered in his thoughts like a distant echo. Anton Vasile initiated the undocking procedure. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the clamps released. The Kestrel drifted backwards, slowly separating from Nebula-14. The station loomed in the viewport, its silhouette fractured by the flickering lights inside. As they pulled away, a faint glow expanded across the station, radiating outward from deep within. Not an explosion, not a malfunction, a bloom of resonance, silent and beautiful, drifting like a ripple across the metal skin. It spread in a uniform pattern, tracing shapes similar to the etched symbols in the exit chamber. Rhea watched to unfold. Her voice was quiet. She wondered aloud whether the station was releasing stored energy or signaling something across the void. Anton could not answer. He only knew that Nebula-14 was no longer dormant. The bloom faded as quickly as it had appeared. The Kestrel accelerated away, climbing into a safe trajectory above the station. The distance grew. The resonance diminished. The hum inside Anton's chest quieted. He allowed himself one final look at Nebula-14. The station drifted alone above Saturn, half lit by the pale reflection of the rings. Its core stripped. Its crew vanished. Its secret chamber pulsing with an echo of something not yet understood. Whatever the crew had escaped from, it remained sealed inside the station. And whatever exit vector they had taken, it led to somewhere beyond the known paths of space. Anton realized that they had not been meant to find Nebula-14. They had been drawn to it. And now that they had seen what was inside, the true question was no longer what happened to the crew. The question was whether Nebula-14 would remain silent, or whether the resonance would spread. The Kestrel turned towards deep space. Nebula-14 disappeared before their eyes.
But the echo remained. The Kestrel slipped into the dark without ceremony, leaving the faint silhouette of Nebula-14 behind. The tug's engines hummed softly, adjusting their trajectory into a safe outbound curve above Saturn's high orbit. The moment the station drifted out of immediate range, Anton felt part of the pressure inside his chest release, like a weight unhooking from his ribs. But the release was incomplete. A trace remained, subtle and persistent, like the aftertaste of ozone or the memory of a distant vibration. Rhea ran diagnostics from her console, her gloved hands steady but unmistakably tense. The ship's systems flickered in ways they had never done before. The guidance array had trouble locking on to a stable vector. The environmental stability readouts fluctuated by fractions too small to trigger alarms, but large enough to be noticeable. The comms buffer displayed momentary static, though no external signals were present. Malik checked the propulsion systems manually. He muttered something under his breath about sensor ghosts. But Anton knew the truth. These weren't ghosts. They were resonances, lingering imprints from the station that had carried themselves into the Kestrel systems the moment they undocked. Nebula-14 had left an echo. Anton secured himself at the analysis table and brought up the scans recorded inside the station. The crystalline object in the sealed chamber dominated the file structure.
Every reading from their suits converged on a pattern of fluctuating harmonics. He filtered the data through spectrum analysis, watching the resonance form a wave so smooth it seemed artificial, yet somehow too complex to be engineered. The wave pulsed again. A soft ripple ran through the ship, barely perceptible, but enough to make the air feel thicker. Rhea looked up from her console, eyes narrowing. She asked if he felt that. Anton nodded. The feeling was not inside the ship, it was inside him. The same vibration he had felt in the chamber, but quieter now, more distant. As if the object had marked them, or recognized them, or remembered them. The nav computer finally locked onto a stable outbound heading. The tone confirmed the course. Malik initiated a slow acceleration burn. The Kestrel glided away from Saturn's gravity well, entering a region of space where everything felt lighter. Yet the echo did not fade. If anything, it sharpened. Anton accessed the corrupted log from the terminal recovered inside Nebula-14. He replayed the fragment. The voice trembled with exhaustion. We couldn't contain it. The resonance field destabilized. The core units are secure. We sealed the exit vectors. Group 814 departed 40 minutes ago. Do not follow us. Do not... The recording ended. Anton paused on the last waveform. Beneath the static, a faint harmonic shimmer lingered, identical to the resonance pattern from the crystal. He filtered the audio. Lines of interference sharpened into structure. The interference revealed a background signature behind the voice of the crew member. It wasn't human speech. It wasn't noise. It was the same resonance, the same pulse. It had been present even before the crew fled. Anton realized something. The station hadn't been a container for the resonance. It had been a beacon. As if sensing his realization, the Kestrel's lights dimmed again. This time they stayed dim for several seconds. The ship hummed with uneven energy. Anton's chest tightened. The resonance was synchronizing, a field forming around the tug. Rhea stood up abruptly and braced herself as a low vibration passed through the ship. Malik grabbed the controls and attempted to reroute power. Systems flickered, panels dimmed. External sensors registered a faint distortion behind them, a ripple in the vacuum trailing the ship like a wake. Something was following. Anton switched to the aft cameras. At first, the screen showed only the faint glow of stars. Then one star bent slightly, its light bending as if through a lens. The distortion expanded, a ripple of warped space growing wider before collapsing inward again. It wasn't a ship. It wasn't debris. It was resonance. The field extending from Nebula-14 was propagating outward, tracking the Kestrel like a scent trail. The crystalline object had imprinted its harmonics onto them. It was reaching toward the signature it had marked. Not aggressively, not violently, but with intent. Anton looked at Malik and Rhea. He didn't need to speak. They knew. Nebula-14 was not finished. The resonance bloom they had seen from afar was not an endpoint. It was the beginning of a cycle, a pattern unfolding in precise intervals, and they had become part of that pattern. Anton ran simulations on the nav panel. The results confirmed his fear. If they continued their current course, the resonance field trailing them would intersect their vector repeatedly. Each intersection would intensify the effect, drawing them deeper into whatever phenomenon the crew had fled. There were only two possible solutions: break the imprint or outrun it. Outrunning resonance was impossible. Breaking the imprint might not be. Anton stared at the waveform again. The resonance was a signature that required alignment. If they could disrupt the pattern before the next pulse, the imprint might weaken. The Kestrel systems might revert to normal. The echo might dissolve. But the next pulse was approaching. The countdown appeared in the telemetry without anyone initiating it, a sequence of numbers blinking in the lower corner of the display, as if the system had recognized the pattern on its own. 63 seconds until the next resonance peak. Malik braced himself. Rhea stabled her hands against the console. Anton analyzed the fields one last time. Time was running out. The kestrel's hull vibrated softly, and the distortion behind them expanded again. Something in the dart was preparing to converge with them, and this time, they would not be able to escape it.
The countdown pulsed in the corner of the screen, each number shrinking into the next. 42 seconds, 41. The digits burned into Anton's vision even when he blinked. The ship's lights dimmed again as though the kestrel itself was bracing for impact. Anton secured himself at the main console. Malik gripped the control handles tightly, steadying the ship as tiny fluctuations rippled through the hull. Rhea spread out data across 3 displays, her hands moving fast, searching for anything, any anomaly, any gap, any weakness in the pattern. The resonance field behind them grew brighter on the sensors. What had begun as a distortion was no longer subtle. It gathered structure. A widening band of warped space twisted along their flight path as if something transparent and immense stretched forward, reaching. Anton pulled up the harmonic map. The resonance pulses were aligning in a predictable cycle, each pulse built on the previous one. Whatever was approaching was not a creature or a craft, but a phenomenon, a field that adapted, a field that learned. 30 seconds. Lights flickered once more, slower this time, as if the ship were breathing in rhythm with the countdown. Malik asked what their plan was without looking away. Anton swallowed before answering. They couldn't outrun the field, they couldn't hide from it, but the resonance required alignment to affect them. If they disrupted their own signature, if they interrupted the waveform at the moment of convergence, they might sever the imprint. They might break the connection. Rhea understood immediately. She opened the kestrel's power routing matrix and expanded the manual override. The ship's systems were not designed to scramble their own harmonic output, but they didn't need a system, they needed timing. 20 seconds. Anton identified the exact frequency the crystal had embedded in them. It was faint, like a whisper between radio bands, but it shaped everything. Their sensors, their hull vibrations, even the subtle distortion in their suits. If they amplified the opposite frequency just for a moment, the imprint might fracture. Rhea rerouted auxiliary power. The lights dimmed almost to black as the ship redirected energy into a raw generator loop. The ambient hum of the kestrel deepened, vibrating through the floor like a slow heartbeat. 15 seconds. Behind them, space folded inward. The distortion expanded into a sphere of bending light. It was beautiful in a way that frightened Anton more than anything they had seen on the station. It moved without mass. It advanced without force. It reached, not through distance, but through resonance alone. 10 seconds. Anton locked the counter frequency into the generator coil. The system warned him the activation might destabilize internal electronics. He didn't care. They didn't need a pristine ship. They needed survival. 9 seconds. Rhea calibrated the timing manually. 8. Malik angled the ship so the distortion remained directly aft. 7. The kestrel vibrated harder. Something in the walls hummed in disagreement. 6. Anton braced himself. The generator coil glowed faintly through the floor plates. 5. The distortion bloomed outward like a silent wave. 4. Their suit readouts flickered. Anton's vision blurred. 3. The resonance inside his chest rose sharply, like a memory waking up. 2. Rhea shouted that alignment had peaked. The field is here. 1. Anton activated the counter frequency. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the kestrel convulsed, not violently, but deeply, like the ship's entire structure flinched in a single involuntary motion. The lights exploded into brightness. The floor vibrated with a rigid hum that shot through every alloy panel. The distortion behind them compressed, folding inward upon itself. The waveform on Anton's display shattered into scattered, broken fragments. The hum grew to a piercing clarity. Then everything went silent.
Absolutely silent. Anton felt the resonance inside him snap like a taut cord breaking cleanly. The pressure behind his eyes vanished. His chest loosened. His HUD steadied. The faint shimmer along the visor disappeared. For the first time since leaving Nebula-14, he felt fully aware of his own senses. Malik checked the sensors. The distortion behind them was gone, not dissipating, gone entirely, as if it had never existed. The countdown blinked twice and vanished from the screen. Rhea exhaled sharply. Her hands trembled slightly. The ship's lights stabilized. The Kestrel drifted in the quiet shadow of Saturn's outer orbit, the glow of distant sunlight reflecting across the hull. Anton leaned back, letting the moment settle. The imprint was broken. They had severed the resonance. Whatever had been reaching for them no longer had a connection. But as the relief settled through the cabin, the ship emitted a faint tone from the external sensors, not an alert, but a steady ping. Malik switched to the aft camera.
Nebula-14 was distant now, a faint silhouette against the black. For a few seconds, nothing unusual appeared. Then, Anton noticed a soft glimmer near the station's central spine, a glow rising like a breath, not violent, not chaotic, just a slow, deliberate pulse. Rhea adjusted the magnification. The glow formed a shape, a pattern, a spiral almost identical to the one in the exit chamber. It grew brighter, then dimmed, then began again. Malik asked the question none of them wanted to hear. Was the station activating itself? Anton stared at the spiral. No, he answered, not activating, repeating. The resonance had not been trying to catch them. It had been following a sequence. They had broken their part of the pattern, but the station continued its own cycle unaffected. Nebula-14 was not pursuing anything. It was signaling. To where or to whom, Anton couldn't guess. He turned away from the viewport. He had no intention of understanding the station's purpose right now. Some signals were not meant to be decoded. Some doors were better left closed. He instructed Malik to set a return course toward deep space transit routes. They had enough data to keep Krona occupied for years, and enough experience to know they should never come back. The Kestrel accelerated slowly, pushing into the vast darkness ahead. Behind them, Nebula-14 pulsed again, its spiral glowing like an echo of something ancient and patient. Anton glanced at the harmonic meter one last time. It remained flat, quiet. But he knew that somewhere across the distances between stars, resonance rarely ended. It evolved. It continued. It found new vectors. He hoped they would never cross its path again. He secured his harness. The Kestrel moved forward, and the silence of space, immense and indifferent, swallowed them as they left the station behind.